Alright, hey everybody, Mile here, and today we're going to be going over some Pokemon VGC 2016 battles that we had on the special battle spot ladder. So let's go ahead and get right into it. This team that I'm currently using that you guys will see is my little brother's team that he's got. I helped him make it, so I mean, I kind of know how it works. So let's see here. We have our opponent with Xerneas and Kangaskhan. I go ahead and lead with Groudon and Smeargle. I know he really wanted to try using a Smeargle out with Dark Void, so that's kind of what I helped him out with. And he doesn't really know anything about the 2016 format. He played in 2015 in the beginning of it, and that's about it. And actually a little bit at the end too. Alright, so Groudon is, primal. I do know that Kangaskhan is definitely going to try and fake out my Smeargle, so I go for a Spiky Shield here. And I believe I go for an Eruption as well, assuming that the Xerneas is going to go for a Geomancy. I figured it's going to fake out Smeargle and go for a Geomancy. That made the most sense to me. So what made the most sense to counter that to me was a Spiky Shield and an Eruption. I figured worst case scenario, he hits my Groudon with his Kangaskhan, still goes for a Geomancy, but he fakes out my Groudon, and then nothing really happens. I wasn't too worried about that outcome. I don't know if I should have been worried about it. I don't know if I shouldn't have. But here's the Eruption from the Groudon. Does a good chunk of damage. Unfortunately, it crits the Xerneas, but it's still not enough to KO it. But it forces him to protect, because he's a little worried now. Alright, so Kangaskhan does go for a return now onto the Smeargle slot. I thought he would have went onto the Groudon slot, but he went to take out the Smeargle. He really did not want to deal with the Dark Void. Makes sense, I get it. I was trying to transform into my Groudon though with him. I wasn't trying to go for a Dark Void or anything. And then I go ahead and go for a P-Blades, knowing that if he doesn't protect, I can live the Geomancy and then knock out if the P-Blades connects. And it connects with Kangaskhan, so that was really lucky for me. So I go ahead and send my Xerneas out here now. I think I go for a Geomancy. I'm not sure what to do at this point. I don't think me going for an attacking move makes much sense against his team, because I don't think it'll, I'm pretty sure both will basically resist it. It won't do much damage. He goes for a Moonblast onto my Xerneas. I'm like, okay, whatever, it's Fairy type, and I'm like, whoa, oh my goodness, that almost KO'd me. Took me down to 1 HP. I get my Geomancy off. Alright, now that the Geomancy is off, I'm like, okay. Alright, hopefully his Groudon doesn't go for a spread move. I'm like, he'll probably Earth Power my Groudon. My Groudon should be able to survive that. I'm like, okay, I'm not too worried now. And he does go for the Earth Power. I was like, oh, thank you, I made the right call. I was a bit worried about that, but I'm glad that I made the correct call. And then I retaliate with my own P-Blades play, knowing that I'll at least KO the Xerneas, and I'm like, wow, that did way more damage to the Groudon than I thought it would. I was like, I would have got a crit there. That would have just done, would have been awesome. I was like, okay, whatever, not that big of a deal though, because I can just Dazzling Gleams. Then he sends Sableye, and I'm like, okay, I can't Dazzling Gleams now, I have to double protect. Sableye, I believe, has access to fake out. So I go for double protect. I know he has his Prankster also, so I'm not sure what he's going to do, but he goes for the Swagger and the Flamethrower. So I'm like, okay, Flamethrower, alright, kind of weird, wasn't expecting that. And then I'm like, okay, he's going to Swagger Xerneas, he's going to try it again. Hopefully I don't get confused. Hopefully my Xerneas does, come through with that Dazzling Gleam. He's confused, but it uses that Dazzling Gleam. So I was pretty happy. I was like, oh, that was really lucky. Like, it was lucky for me. And we go ahead and KO those two Pokemon. Alright, so that was pretty much, my brother's team. I mean, not too much different than I've been using, except for it's got Salamence on it, and I didn't even need to bring the Salamence that time. So let's see here. This one was a pretty close game also. I think we'll just showcase this one. This is a different team that I also was trying out when figuring out what I wanted to make for my brother's team, or I should say help him make. I didn't just make his team myself. So I send out Talonflame and Gengar. My opponent leads with Weavile and Salamence. I'm not too worried. I'm like, okay, the Intimidate's kind of annoying, and the fake out pressure is a bit of a problem, but unfortunately, I mean, I have Quick Guard on my Talonflame, but I really wanted to try and get a Tailwind up, so I went for Tailwind. I was like, I don't know if Tailwind Gale Wings will out-prioritize Fake Out. I didn't think it would, and it didn't. And I go for a Will-O-Wisp on the Salamence. Getting that burn off, he goes for a Hyper Voice here. And unfortunately, it does KO Talonflame. Gengar is luckily, you know, hangs in there. Excuse me, sorry, still a bit sick. I send out Groudon here. I'm not too worried because I'm not going to get intimidated by the Salamence. I saw the damage that the Salamence did, and it didn't KO my Gengar with Hyper Voice. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Gengar's frail. He shouldn't be anything. So I'm like, Groudon's bulky. He can take it. Weavile goes for an Icicle Crash, though Groudon avoids it. That was pretty awesome. I was like, oh dang, nice. He goes for another Hyper Voice. Unfortunately, it's a critical hit on Groudon, and Gengar faints. I was like, oh man, that crit. I go for an Eruption here, you know, trying to get some damage off on that Salamence. And I figured it's super effective against Weavile also, so I was hoping to KO it. Unfortunately, it just brings Weavile, you know, well, not unfortunately, it does bring Weavile down to its Focus Sash. It's kind of expected. I wouldn't recommend really any other item on Weavile, so kind of expected. And Salamence is out here, and I bring out my Mega Kang. And Salamence ends up protecting here, where I think this is where I made a pretty bad play, because Salamence protects. And I was going to fake out the Salamence and Thunder Punch it also. And then Weavile used Icicle Shards, whereas if I would have just faked out the Weavile, I would have KO'd it, not took any damage, Salamence would have just protected. It would have been a better play on my part. So I decided to protect now that I know that he's going to try and Icicle Shards me, and his Salamence is going to probably do something, but then I go for the Sucker Punch, knowing that if I Sucker Punch Salamence, if it KOs him, great. If not, it should bring him close enough to the burn to KO him. And he went for an Icicle Crash on my Kangaskhan. I didn't expect that. I thought he'd go for it on my Groudon again. So he goes for the Hyper Voice now. Our Kangaskhan's nice and bulky, so it survives, and then Salamence goes down to the burn. So I believe he's got Groudon left. And Talonflame, yeah. So you go ahead and, you know, Tailwind's what I tried to get set up. So I'm like, uh-oh, Tailwind's up. But I went for a Sucker Punch on the Weavile, knowing that he'd probably go for a Tailwind. And if I Sucker Punch Weavile, I'll KO him if he goes for an attacking move, because he's, you know, like 1 HP. And I figured Groudon can go ahead and go for a Thunder Punch onto the Talonflame. And it should KO him, since we already saw that somebody had the Focus Sash. Since there shouldn't be anything keeping him alive. Then he sends out his Groudon, and I'm like, okay, what I have to do here is I have to go for an attacking move on this Groudon. Hope that he misses a Perceptual Blades if he goes for that. And I was like, he's probably going to go for like an Eruption and just Chaos, but he goes for Perceptual Blades, and my Groudon avoids it. Unfortunately, Kangaskhan doesn't avoid it, and he goes down, but, you know, I really should have lost there at that point. And I was like, okay, cool. Then I'd like get my blades off. I'm like, well, maybe, just maybe I'll one-hit KO it because he's just one Pokemon out there. I was like, oh, no, it didn't one-hit KO him. It's super close. So I'm like, I'm going to protect this turn to try and stall out the Tailwind as much as I possibly can. And I protect the Perceptual Blades, and then he goes for Perceptual Blades again, and I avoid it again. I'm like, awesome. I went for another Perceptual Blades. I was like, I could not believe that I won that game. I was like, wow, I really should have lost. But that's what happens when you use moves that aren't 100% accurate for, you know, that big power that they got. So I think I'm just gonna go over those 2 games that I played. Sorry I haven't, been doing like live commentary while playing games right now. I'm just sick. Once I get better, I'll I'll start doing that again. And I'm hoping to be better by February, or well, honestly, I'd rather be better by this weekend, Friday and Saturday, so I can do some live international stuff. But I'll at least save the battles when I play in that January international. So thanks for watching, though. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy, go into that like button, comment, subscribe, share, favorite, all that stuff. It does really help me out, and I really do appreciate it. So thanks again, and goodbye, friends.